They're counting on you. We've faced and overcome so much. Sometimes I wonder how we made it through. We both know that the old ways aren't going to work this time. This journey has changed us, changed you. But it's not over yet. You need the right tools for the job.
Hello! Hello! How are all y'all doing? We have not been here together like this in, I think, like a month or more. Crazy shit. More to welcome in Blaze. If I close this deal, it's nearly 90K in business for the year. That is fucking incredible, dude. Congratulations. I know that you've worked your ass off. You really deserve it. Hey, Ryan on Facebook. Thanks for popping in. Oh, shit. God, good to see you. My perfume oil fell. Here's the thing. If you like perfume, or you know anyone or love anyone who likes perfume, this stuff, it's called Kai. It's so good. It's all I wear now. But hello. Welcome in. Raven, hello. How are you doing today? Lovely to see you. And hey, everyone, happy Pride. It's June. We're at our most powerful. But welcome in. I'm glad that you're all here. I'm happy to be here. And it has been a minute since we've done some live fiction readings. Hey, CL3KO. Loved your work in Star Wars, dude. Welcome in. The map's up. The map's up. I really should, like, get it framed and, like, nice, you know? It's just held up there with Scotch tape. But one day soon, we're gonna make it nice. Love me some Aihrde, so I figured I'd stop in. Well then, hey, Raven, if it's your first time, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. Every single Monday, in theory, if you don't count the last, like, 4 Mondays, every Monday we get together and we read fiction that's set in Aihrde. Sometimes we read right from the Codex. Today, we are going to be reading some fiction. Very excited about it. Just found the channel, better not disappoint. Here's the thing. We have a lot of trolls that host shows on this channel. You found the worst one. Congratulations. Welcome in. Make yourselves at home. But no, we're here to basically read fiction. If you're new to the channel, hello, welcome in. We have a ton of different stuff all throughout the week. We do actual plays on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday. On Tuesday, we do an AMA with our CEO, Steve Chenault. Wednesdays, we do world building in the morning. It's awesome. And yeah, basically that's the rundown. You mispronounced most awesome. If you like getting into the weeds, the nitty gritty of lore, you've come to the right place. You're not a very good troll. You haven't insulted anyone yet. Here's the thing. On my own personal channel, I have, like, a point redemption system where you can do, like, we have it here on Twitch where you can, like, redeem points, like channel points, to make Steve drink a Dr. Pepper or have everyone take a drink of water or whatever. On mine, there's a really high price point one for a personalized roast, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And I'm not good at roasting or insulting people, so take a drink and hydrate or dihydrate. Can't do it. I've never recovered truly. Your roast was a pleasure, mortal. It was so lovely. Chuck roast. You know what? I'd roast Chuck. If Chuck dared to show his face around here tonight, I would roast him unprompted. And that's a promise. That's on God. But hey, welcome in. A couple of insults you can use and feel free. Let's go. Lay them on me. I've heard some crazy ones. I would love to be roasted. You know what? Maybe I'll make a channel, like, point redemption thing of, like, you can roast me, but anyone can do that anyway at any time ever, so that's fair. Wasn't one of the past conversations on here about our favorite insults? That's entirely possible. Man, maybe. I love roasting, like, strangers. I love roasting people, like, in traffic, like, on the road. Insult number 2. Raven, I think your insult number 1 was so wild and crazy that it did not actually get posted. It might have been, like, auto modded. You're an absolute celebrity. You get invited everywhere once. That's good. Ooh, new channel redemption idea. Kind of a good one, though. Having a point redeem for it will make people get creative with it, potentially. Just a thought. Not a bad plan. Not a bad idea. I kind of like it. Hey, Lynette, welcome in. Thanks for the follow. I appreciate you. But just to kind of explain, we're still just kind of like chatting right now and hanging out and catching up because it's been 4 weeks because I suck. But the story that we're going to be reading tonight, this is kind of a good point for anyone who's new to like come and jump in. We have been following our protagonists. Their names are Yurik, Ava, and Folkgard. Yurik and Ava are both human. Folkgard is a dwarf. And they are journeying through the Dunhollow Wood, which is a giant haunted forest that's very dangerous, to get to the pools of Dunhollow, where they are supposed to find, I think it was a flower or a root or something, I don't remember. They're going to find something with like healing properties, because they have a friend, another member of their party named Gregor, who was deathly injured in a storm and is currently in the care and keeping of a dryad on the other side of the world. So they have basically crossed a lot of Aihrde. Where is the Dunhollow? I actually don't know where it is. Whatever. I won't look for that right now. They've crossed the continent to the Dunhollow Wood in search of this miraculous mythological like cure. And Yurik has been to the Dunhollow Wood once before. His entire party, I think, was scattered in the wood. Many of them lost. And so far, being in the wood, a couple of things have happened, just to get everyone like caught up. I'm sorry if you've like read all this before, but hey, it's been like 4 weeks. At the boundary of the forest, Yurik, Ava, and Folkgard came across a village that was being ransacked by bandits. One of the bandits, they managed to so they freed the village and killed all the bandits. One of the bandits got away. They caught up to him. He was mortally wounded. And before they finished the job, he asked them to take this small jade figurine that he has on his person and use it to free his sister from slavery, basically, as she was being held somewhere deeper along their path. A local, not dryad, but a woodland spirit of Dunhollow Wood also saw the little jade figure and really wants it. But it was given to Yurik and Ava, and so she has been tailing them and tormenting them and trying to take the figurine from them. Most recently, the whole group was accosted by ghosts because the Dunhollow Wood is haunted by the tortured souls of everyone who died within the boundaries of the wood. And that's pretty much where that's basically where we're at. They fought off the ghosts, and their journey continues. Hey, Ragman, welcome in. Welcome in from YouTube. How are you today? Thank you for that. Anytime. It's been 4 weeks since we've come back to the story, because just life gets in the way and we haven't been able to stream on Mondays for a minute, but I'm super excited to be back and I can't wait to dive back into this story. You're all going to be listening to a Steve Chenault classic in the making. This is a draft. This is not available anywhere currently. It is a continuation of our current 3 books of fiction, which are the covers that you're seeing alternating up here. The Giant's Board being the most recent. Let me see if I can drop a link to our fiction books really quick, just for anyone who is not familiar. All of this, of course, is set in the world of Aihrde, and really, you love to see it. What can I search to find it? Here we go. I'll drop a link to our first book. First of 3. All of these other books are kind of they're much shorter books of flash fiction. This is the first novel set in Aihrde. Gentle Rose, why does that shirt make me feel like Bert and Ernie are about to tell me the letter of the day? It is the month for Bert and Ernie. I'm bringing the Bert and Ernie vibes. Here's the thing. Hey, ONB, welcome in. How are you today? Thanks for tuning in from X. Can't wait for the reforged edition of CNC. Dude, me neither. I'm so excited. I know that, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, it's another printing of the core books, but it also feels like so much more than that. Like, being able to remove all of the OGL content. So, really, for the first time, like, it's our game. It's ours. It's completely original. And, like, we get to share it. And, like, I'm so glad that there's now a copy editor on deck, so there's going to be no more typos. I can't wait. I'm so excited. All the art is going to be incredible. I know that it, like, you could say, like, they're not changing that much, it's just another printing, but, like, honestly, I truly think that, like, the reforged books are really, like, raising the standard for Castles and Crusades products. And that standard will continue, you know? Super, super excited. This will be my only game. Dude, us too. So my crew, we stream on a different channel, but we did like a 13-episode mini-series of CNC. Hey, Zardward the Bard, welcome in. I love your username. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, Manfred, welcome in. I never said hello to you. And Wolf, I don't think I said hello to you either when you came in. It's so good to see you both. We were a 5e crew, and we played Castles and Crusades one time, and we're sold. We're now super, super into it. Still streaming 5e, but that's only so our game master can kind of get into game mastering again and do a CNC game. We're very excited about it. Greetings! So never apologize for yelling in this house, you know? We're all caps all the time. All caps, all ass. 100%. Absolutely love CNC, Amazing Adventures, and Victorious. I've heard a little bit about Victorious. What is it? I'm hyped for the Wayward Realms. The Wayward Realms? Wait, am I stupid? What are the Wayward Realms? Is that one of our products that I don't know about? Oh, God. Starla, thanks for coming in and hanging out on YouTube. Appreciate you. How are you today? There's a town called Jordan in Aihrde. Yeah, I was like... So I did an interview with a lot of the trolls, and all of that is uploaded on YouTube. And the final interview that I did was with Steve, who designed Aihrde. And towards the end of that interview, he was talking about how, like, there are Easter eggs of, like, people that he knows all over Aihrde. So I wonder if, like, the Wilston Sea, he has a son named Wilson. Like, I look and just wonder about, like, man, what is an Easter egg and what isn't? Ooh, the upcoming spiritual successor to Elder Scrolls Daggerfall. I'm familiar with Elder Scrolls. What is Daggerfall? Dude, this looks so cool. Alright, Elder Scrolls Wayward Realms. See it on Steam. Dude, this looks sweet. I'm gonna save that. That looks really cool. Thanks for putting that on my radar. I've kind of gotten back into video games a little bit. The thing that broke the seal for me on getting back into video games, I'm embarrassed to admit, was a Sonic the Hedgehog murder mystery. Called Who Killed Sonic the Hedgehog? And it's free, and we streamed it. And, I mean, it's super funny. It's also really fun. And basically, I hadn't been playing video games for a while. And that kind of broke the seal, and I'm now, like, back into it and looking for video games again. Ooh, starting Saturday, both my weekly games will officially be in CNC. Savage! Let's go! That's awesome. Man, you might have told me this already, but are you the castle keeper, or are you playing? Victorious is a game set in Victorian times, so if you wanted to play your own version of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen without all the pretentiousness of Moore's work, you can. I got it when it went on sale for $10 and fell in love with it. It's really an underrated gem. That sounds awesome. I love, like, Victorian era, like, just that mood in a setting. It's so cool. Daggerfall was a rushed, buggy, hot mess, and I played hundreds of hours of it. Those are some of the best games ever that are they're just shitty, you know? When they're just shitty, like really shitty. Sometimes they're like awesome. Hey Charlie, welcome in. Thank you for the follow on Twitch. Welcome in. CK for both. Fuck yeah. Dude, I'm happy for you. That's gonna be awesome. But hey, I think it's probably about that time. Let's dive into some fiction. I won't do the full recap again, but to briefest recap ever, Yurik, Ava, and Folkguard are our adventuring party. That's them there. They are currently... Hey, Susurus, welcome in. We enjoy Project Zomboid. Ooh, I'm going to fold that away. They're going through the Dunhollow Forest in order to secure a treasure in the pools of Dunhollow. They're being trailed by a vengeful kind of like forest spirit who wants a little jade figurine that they are carrying, which they are planning to use to free a dead bandit's sister from slavery. And that's where we're at. So get yourself a cozy beverage. Settle in. This is a really great stream. If you've never been here before, welcome, and thank you for being here. This is a really great one to, like, if you like to draw, or if you have, like, some cleaning to get done, or you're cooking, or, like, you have a task to do. This is a super great, like, body doubling task. So go ahead and settle in, and I'm gonna just read some fiction, and I hope that you guys like it. This is called The Pools of Dunhollow by Stephen Chenault. It's not available yet, so if you have feedback to give, now's the time. Trollsah. The fire fizzled out as the sun lit the eastern sky. Sharp rays of soft yellow light slipped through the upper canopy, promising a clear day. Little came to the glade where the trio slept. Only enough to remind them of the cold that had crept into their bones after the evening's encounter. The evening's mist had settled, and everything was blanketed in a thin sheen of water that pooled here and there where it could. The air was heavy, expectant, as if at any moment it was ready to let go a sigh of relief that the night was at last over and the day could begin. Folkguard stood over the fire and stamped it out with his boots. It was deliberate, slow, without any sign of violence. He just patted the fire into the ground until a single curl of smoke proved the only mark of its existence. It coiled up the inside of the bole of the tree until it vanished in the rising light. Ava washed her face in the pool and stopped, mid-wash, to stare at herself for a little while. She looked at the dirt on her cheek, her hair matted and in places tangling. She looked wild, but felt free, and she smiled as she brushed her long fingers through the water, dispelling the magic that lay there. Yurik looked first at the dwarf, then Ava. He smiled when he saw her move the water, for he had come to marvel at her beauty in the morning. Fresh like the world, he thought, born anew every day without stain of yesterday. He rose slowly and began unbuckling his armor, setting aside pieces of plate until only the chain remained, which he pulled over his head. All of this he expertly bundled up, tied off with thick leather thongs, and attached it to the top of his pack. The pieces of plate he strung together and tucked them in the back. "You done with the armor?" Ava looked over at him, and much like she paused to admire him. His muscled arms and shoulders. Long used to wearing heavy mail, his body showed it. I believe for the now, yes. I'm going to port it, though my back should groan from the effort, and put it back on at night. It seems the nights hound us here more than the day. Traveling in this metal and sleeping in it has become a bit exhausting. He cinched his pack tightly. I don't know how you do it in the first place. Seems too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter and too heavy all year long. She rose and began gathering her own gear. I don't much notice, I suppose, hot or cold. Better either than a sword through the midriff. Better indeed. Within half an hour they had packed, washed, eaten, and taken their leave of the small glade. Yurik took a moment to fill his flasks from the pool, hoping the water might be more refreshing than a more mundane stream. They saw no sign of the wraiths they had fought the night before, and indeed, if pressed, they might remember it more as a dream than aught else. We'll come to the outer pools today. We'll need to be on our guard. Yurik set off through the clearing, and the deep grasses where the spirits had been the night before. He did not look to the left or right, paying no heed to any evil or living dead. Ava ranged out 12 feet to his left, and Folkguard followed behind. The day proved a little more trying than the previous several days. Small shelves of rock cut the gentle slope, forcing them to walk as if up a giant stair, laboring their movement. The trees clung more haphazardly to the ground, sometimes growing over the rocky ledges, their long roots like fingers reaching for and grasping the earth a few inches or feet below. There was more deadfall as well, as trees suffered the fate of weak earth more often here, so that they lay dead across the path, on the ledges, and in the small gulches that seemed to be everywhere. By early afternoon, the temperature dropped, and the wind picked up. It was cool and moist and promised them water, lots of it, somewhere in front of them. Hey, Dean Chris, welcome in. Yurik remarked that they had now had their second taste of the pools of Dunhollow. The first was the creek of the day before, but this taste was different. It held some subtle thought that escaped them, a feeling of uneasiness and forgetfulness, as if something were out of place, but what that something was, no one could tell. Soon thereafter, the sky darkened, and a bank of clouds rolled over the forest, coming from the south. The furthest reaches of the anvil wind, that mighty wind that gathered over the warm waters of the amber sea far to the south, and blew with ever greater speed up and over the mountains, carrying water and snow with it where it went. Here, in the Gotland, the anvil wind rarely blew, but it seemed bent on teasing the travelers with hints of the southern lands. It carried no warmth with it this far north. It promised cold, and, if their luck failed them, rain. Ava, now 50 or so feet ahead of the other two, turned and motioned for them to hurry, as she too picked up the pace. Yurik regretted his armor, and regretted leaving Blue behind. I'd have a squire if I had half a brain. Folkguard, will you be my squire? The dwarf laughed. My debt to you is great, for you lay my father to stone when you need not have done so. But 'twere I to squire to you, my father might push aside that burial stone and come to these far lands and hunt me and you down. Let us leave all that to sore muscles and tired legs. Yurik laughed, but picked up the pace to catch up with Ava, who seemed hell-bent on leaving them behind. We have a little perspective shift here. This is the nymph, the spirit that's trailing them. Her name is Aihrde. Aihrde fled into the early dawn, terrified of the night and the red-headed demon that he traveled with. That's Ava. In her panic, she took the form of an owl, cutting his cheek with her claw, though she knew if she lingered but a moment, she may have taken his eye. But what good that? It was the stone she wanted, not the eye of some wayward creature. so she flew. Her flight took her some miles west, deeper into the wood, until, alighting upon a branch, she turned back to her natural form, sitting there, legs curled up under her gown, head resting on her knees, tangled golden hair clinging to face, gown, and legs. With wide eyes she stared to the east, to where the man was, to where the stone was. She wept some little, tears like crystals raising up in her eyes, pooling there before running over the lower lid of her delicate eye, sliding down the thin bones of her cheek. She thought only of the stone, and how she may never have it. Thus she sat for many long hours, until at last the bubbling creek stole into her melancholy, and her mind turned to it, and she heard it, and it alone. Climbing down from the limb, she dropped to the mossy floor of the forest, crept to the creek bank, and sat again. She looked into the water and smiled, for she saw her wondrous beauty, so young and yet so old, for she was, of course, immortal, and of the Val Ericune, that's the gods of Aihrde. Her smile brightened her demeanor, and she thought now how the stone might enhance the wonder of her, and how she would have it. A small piece of detritus floated by. Slowly it spun around in the water, catching her eye. It was not natural. It was something dead, the life of it drained from it, the beauty of it spoiled and desecrated, as if the soil where it grew itself was dead. It amused her only for a second, seeing it thus, but then her eyes widened, and she bolted upright, knowing now what path she must take to slay the man-thing and the demon and the dwarf that traveled with them. What did she see? We don't know. Following the creek, she flighted up through the forest, moving quickly as wood nymphs do when they have a purpose. She knew most every tree, root, and limb, creek, stream, and bed in the dun hollow, though not as a ranger might, or a hunter, not in some conscious way that map-makers plot, but rather like a bird, or some other forest animal. She followed the creek for a long while, until its surface began to darken, and small dams of treefall and other debris blocked its clear passage, and the water took on a polluted sheen. It stood still in deeper pools, covered by brackish slime. The forest, too, began to change. The trees seemed heavier, darker, their branches thick with foliage hanging low to the earth, making it look unnaturally dark. The leaves, too, were stained with a deep green than would be normal, more green than would be normal, pregnant with some power held in the soil and air. And the air, thick, unmoving, choked her, and made her draw up her gown to cover her nose and mouth. This stopped the greater malignant stench that sprung up from where the creek bubbled, from a higher ledge, and the ground seemed black with some blight. Stopping before the ledge, she smiled, for above and beyond lay a deep pool, several of them, each connected with spillover and bogs. The whole lay beneath the canopy of several trees, whose deadened limbs grew so thick that little light from the day spilled through. Fumes filled the air, fed by the fires of the crone who dwelt there. Harriet, she called herself, and she had lived there many long years, brewing what poisons she could, whether through potions, conjurations, or some other devilry known only to those who walk those dark paths. Aihrde held no fear of the crone, though she knew other nymphs who fell afoul of her and were never seen again. But Aihrde was not like others of her kind. She was wise and fearless. With little thought to the danger that lay before her, she sprang lightly up the ledge, stopping only for a moment, halfway up the rocky face to look into the water trickled down in strangled clots. It held a metallic smell, so that she involuntarily wrinkled her nose. Looking up, she could not see the sky, though it was late in the afternoon. The fumes of the crone, the deadened tree, and other noxious magics blotted it out. Digging her toes into the stone, she thrust herself up and over the edge of the ledge to come to the great wonder of the crone's abode. Before her stood a wide glade of 3 great pools, each of which mingled with the other through some marshy muck and bog. The water, normally so blue, was dark, greenish-black, but streaked here and there with lighter greens that gave some promise to life, if algae and nothing else. For the water stood still, with no movement from frog or fish, wind or other device. It stood as if dead to all the world. The banks of each pool, where no bog lay, held a wide assortment of bog bean, milkweed, and cattail. These plants, too, seemed dull, as if fed on hopelessness and starved of light. Through it all lay cobbled paths of broad stone that spread out hither and yon through the morass of watered earth. Beyond it all, beneath a broad shelf of rock and dirt, stood a cabin. The cabin looked incongruous, built at odd angles. The gabled roof appeared normal at first glance, but the right gable overshot the left by some feet, and a small round window that stood underneath it lay off to the center. The front of the cabin, in fact the whole structure, was built of untreated cypress so that it aged gray, warped not a little, and sported a textured surface that was rough to the touch. The door leaned out from the structure at the top, where the gabled lintel of perfect proportions seemed at odds with the roof above. The roof itself consisted of thick-cut overlapping shingles, long stained with water and moss, much of which hung over the edges of the roof, shadowing the door. A fire burned in front of the cabin, a small pit laced with iron, filled with debris, smoked and crackled, putting off an oily smoke that rose into the air and added to the fumes. Before the fire sat an old woman, hunched over her lap, grinding some substance up with a pestle and mortar. Her long, stringy, dirty blonde hair curtained her face. She wore a ragged dress, the bottom of which was filthy with stains of water and muck. A frog, somewhere in the bog or pools, croaked, its voice so great that it lay a pall of silence over the whole scene. Aihrde watched the crone for a long minute, and though she made no attempt to hide herself, her breath grew shallow, and she cloaked the sound of her presence, from fear or curiosity, even she could not say. It came to her that she might take a new form and approach the crone that way, but her instincts told her otherwise. Surprising the witch seemed unwise. She had never seen the crone up this close. She knew of her. Her brewing, her fires, always smoke in the forest, but she never had cause to speak with her. Aihrde realized the frog had stopped croaking, though the witch continued to grind her pestle against something in the little stone bowl. The fae did not move. She froze, and her breathing grew ever more shallow. Suddenly, the witch stood. She looked around and set her tools down and walked to the pool's edge. Through happenstance or purpose, the light struck the crone in the face, and the full horror of her lay revealed to Aihrde. The witch's face was deep and sallow, lined with gulches in her flesh that cut vertically down her cheeks and made the bones of her face protrude. Thin lips drawn up over broken, jagged teeth and reddened gums. Her eyes were wide, jaundiced yellow, and filled with an errant quality that made it seem as if they looked in every direction and none at once. Her hair was that of a corpse, tired and stringy, a tangled mat of knots. Her nose, long once, was severed at the tip, so that the wound of it made it seem sponge-like. The crone's frame suffered the same blight, old beyond living, decaying flesh clinging to ancient bones. Her arms were visible. Sorry, I think there's a typo. Her arms were visible and seemed without muscle, plagued with fat that hung down too low even for the very old. Only her hands showed some vitality. The veins that carried her thin blood leapt out upon the backs of her long, clawed hands and gave them an aspect of power that belied the frail, rotting morass of her overall demeanor. The witch walked to the pond's edge, passed through a sprig of cattails to enter the pool. She stopped only when the water lapped her knees. The fae watched, fascinated, as the crone looked down into the pond. She chuckled, almost girl-like, and began to sway to and fro, captured, it seemed, by her own reflection. With a movement so fast and unexpected, the fae jumped as the witch plunged her hand into the water and snapped up a long, thin barb of bloodworm that, once caught, flung itself about, battering its tiny form against the witch's finger and thumb. He strove to impale its tormentor with one of its long proboscis. With its one long proboscis? Proboscis. How pretty. How very pretty. And how lovely. The witch bit off the worm's head and dropped the rest. Twisting her mouth and tongue about, she plucked the tiny fang from the mashed head and with a keen eye turned upon Aihrde and spat the barb at her. Before the fae ever realized she was seen, the barb drove into her cheek with such stinging pain that she slapped her face hard, driving the little dart deeper beneath the skin. A wild fear took the fae, and she turned to flee, conjuring the owl again, for it was uppermost in her memory. But not glamour changed her. There's a typo. No glamour changed her, so that when she leapt to fly, she fell forward and tumbled over the ledge she had just climbed. Enough sense remained with her, and she grabbed the rocks, but the sharp edges cut her fingers and bruised her arm, and with a squeal she fell and tumbled the dozen or so feet to the ground below. There she landed, with a thump and splash, half in the water, half on the mossy bank. She called for help, but there were none to heed her failing breath, and the sound of her faded as the poison spread through her flesh. She felt the weight of it as it stole her breath, and she thought of the man who died upon the bank, the man with the stone. She thought of him floating down the long, cold river, and she wondered if she might find him again. "You'll not die, my pretty little thing. You'll not die just yet." The witch stood over her, looking down, across her knobbed nose, spittle on her lips and a hunger about her that drove Aihrde wild with fear. "I'll take you home and see what brings you to my little corner of the wood, and maybe then I'll eat you. Or maybe not." She scooped up the fae with ease. Not only did the wood nymph weigh next to nothing, but the crone was a beast of the wretched plains, a demoness of tremendous power. Power in the pools of her wisdom, collected all these many years. Power in her magics, studied and perfected. Power in her form, a beastly strength that would be the envy of any ogre. She followed the ledge around to the east until she came to a set of hidden stairs, cleverly carved into the rock face, hidden beneath thick moss. It was narrow, however, only wide enough for the witch, so she dropped the fae and took her by the hair one-handed and drug her that way. Her feet pulled at the moss, and the stone beneath pulled at her flesh, scraping her heels and calves. She felt it, but could not cry out, for the witch's poison held her still. A sinking fear took her, settling in the deeps of her stomach. Mounting the ledge, the witch dragged the thin fae down a stone path to the small clearing before the cabin and dropped her next to the fire. She took her three-legged stool in hand, spun around and sat upon it, looking down at the fae woman before. I do not know you, though you seem familiar. The smell of you. Do you dwell along the river, the Troll-Tongue River? She looked at her, waiting for a response she knew would not come. Her voice crackled like dry paper. Never mind, dear. I can unravel you. She began to examine the fae, lifting her head and looking in her eyes, behind her ears, pulling her lips down to see her teeth. She ruffled through her hair, then examined her gown and mumbled something about the exquisite nature of fairy cloth. She looked at her arms and tracked the veins of her down to her fingers. There she found a little wad of hair, tightly held between her pinky and palm. What have we here? She carefully unraveled the hair, no more than a dozen strands. Putting it to her nose, she took a long whiff. A man's hair. What need have you of a man's hair? She sniffed again. The foul noise of the air passing up and into her nasal cavity was thunderous, as if a sea cave fought off a storm. Arisef looked on in fear, though the fear began to knot in her stomach as she thought of the man, the stone, and the witch's interference. Harriet blenched, jerking her head back as if assaulted by some foul smell. Now what is this, little fae? She sniffed again, carefully this time, and her eyes widened. How now the fates have played such a card as this? How now indeed? She looked down at the fae and smiled a wicked, jagged, toothed smile, though there was no humor in it. My dear, what are you about? She turned to the left and right until she saw a small mortar. She picked it up, dumped out its contents, and blew them out to clean it of debris. Carefully, she set the hair in the small clay pot. Now, my dear, what other secrets do you hold? She continued her investigation, patting her stomach and checking the gown for some hidden device, and then to her ankles and feet. For a long while, she looked at her feet. Something here, my dear. I can sense it. She lifted the foot to look closer. The heel was scratched from being dragged up the stone steps, and some welts of blood trickled out. Roughly wiping that away, the old crone muttered again, Not that I care, and looked closer at the fae toes. There, beneath the nail, was some small red stains of blood. Not yours, I see, but whose? The crone stopped for a moment and looked up to the trees above her. There a flock of wicked-looking birds perched, watching her with some intensity. They were gray in color, small, somewhat smaller than a crow, with featherless necks and heads, and red-black eyes that gave them an evil appearance. The witch looked at the birds for a moment, until they shifted and one chirped a half-hearted squeak that sounded not unlike a dish cracking. I don't want to read anything about nails, so I'm just going to take a look through here and make sure that we're not. Give me one moment. Okay, cool. We're good. I can keep reading. She gets ready to do it and then doesn't, so if you're squeamish, like I am, it's all good. The witch sat... Oh, nope. Okay, sorry. Well, my dear, you've blood aplenty, yours and another's, and I'll bet my crone's eye that blood matches that hair. You took it in anger, I feel. Yes, my dear, in anger. She reached into a pocket in the dress and pulled out a small penknife. She scraped the blood from the nail and lifted up to sniff it. The smell was undeniable. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my sweet dear, whatever have you brought poor Harriet? The ball in Arisef's stomach tightened, and the fear began to turn. The heat of this new feeling unfolded in her mind and steeled her resolve. Now this crone wished for the stone. It would not be, she thought to herself, and began to conjure what glamours she could. The witch sat back and watched her for a moment. How now, my dear? Your glamours will have no effect on me. Here. Not in my glade, my home. Not in Harriet's house. She stood and crossed the yard to the cabin's edge, where lay a pile of shoes and boots. She shuffled through them. Some were very old and rotted, others not so much. She found one with a long leather lace and quickly pulled the lace from it. Returning to Arisef, she lifted her up so she could stand, barely, and tied her hands tightly behind her back. She drug her then to the cabin and set her upon the table. Within the cabin stood a mountain of debris, all manner of cupboards, cabinets, shelves, and tables. Instruments hung from the wall and ceiling, as did a host of plants, some fresh, others dried, jars, pots, kettles, and other sundries one might find in an apothecary. Hey, Longshot, welcome in. Harriet rustled around in the one tall, thin, mustard-colored cabinet until she found a small jar of ink and quill. Taking these to the Fae, she spoke words over the quill and blew on it, then spit in the jar. Taking the quill, she dipped it in ink and wrote tiny rune letters on the leather strap. There, my dear, that will hold you until you quit these thoughts of glamours and escape. Your long journey is at an end. She took Arisef's face in her hands and looked her in the eye. Accept it. I am going to cook you, and I'm going to eat you. But first, I shall find this lover of yours and make him pay. She rose up then, towering over the Fae. He'll pay. He'll pay for what he did to me, for I have not forgotten. She took Arisef in her arms, crossed the room to a cage that hung from the ceiling, and thrust her in it. It was tight, but not so tight that she couldn't move a little and turn around when the spell wore off. For now, she lay against the all of it, on a small pile of bones, one of which were the fingers and hand of some small human child, or worse, a Fae. Harriet closed and locked the door, tying it off with another leather strap, this one taken from the arm of a chair. She looked at the Fae for a long minute. Perhaps not. Perhaps I won't eat you. Perhaps I'll keep you here, a pretty thing for my amusement. She passed out of the cabin and into the dusk. She looked out across the pools and into the forest beyond, straining her eyes in some bold hope to see through bole and limb. Nothing. Turning to the birds in the tree. Now, earn your mother's grace. A witch's eyes, a witch's ears. You, witch's eagles. Earn my grace and find me the man. He'll be armored and carry some sword or axe. Find him and bring me some token of his purpose and direction. Go. Her yowl of command frightened the birds so that they took to wing, with a great fluttering of wings and squawking noise of bird calls through the trees, and into the wood as they scattered, and flew off in many directions. The crone watched after them, long after they had gone. At last, she sat down on the stool and took up the mortar. Gently, she pulled the hair from the pot and stared at it. I remember you, Yurik. Yes, I remember you. That I do. I think that is a great place for us to end. I know we're a little bit early. But man, oh man. Okay, so Yurik has been to the Dunhollow Wood before. If you're new and haven't heard the previous like chapters of this story, he's talked about like how he's been to the Dunhollow Wood before. And it appears he had a run-in with this Harriet. Do we like Harriet? How do we feel? And also, thank you guys for hanging out and listening. I love doing these. They're super, super fun. I got nervous for a second. I respect when people are cool to like read about like graphic stuff involving fingers. I can't do it. So thanks for having patience with me while I skimmed ahead just to make sure there wasn't anything too like squeamish in there. Zardward, I hoped you liked it. Thanks for coming in. And thank you, Wolf. It's been a long time. It's been like a month, if not more. It was definitely super fun to like hop back into this. I still do want to do like a full nice reading of the Codex of Aihrde, maybe for YouTube. Maybe that'll happen sometime soon. Harriet seems kind of, what is the word? Oh yeah, evil. All I really needed to hear about Harriet was wretched and plains. That's it. That's all I need to know. I think we got a good handle on her character. Loved it. I don't worry about mature subject matter. I used to work in a prison. I've seen things I can't unsee. Dude, I bet. I with a group, led like poetry workshops in the prison. And everyone that worked with us was like, they were really, really good behavior. But man, I'm sure like some of the stuff that you'd see, a lot of stuff that was like written about was a lot. But I'm sure like being in that environment like all the time, that'd be tough. That'd take a toll. And I don't mind like mature subjects. It's just like I'm particular about graphic descriptions of certain things. Eyes and appendages. I can't do it. But I admire the folks that can. But I hope that you guys liked it. It was super fun. I love doing these. I can't wait for next week to finally like get back into the routine of doing these readings. I like eyes. The more eyes, the better. Take the thing, add more eyes. More eyes all over everything. Let's go. All eyes all the time. Super into it. But let's toss a raid. We're gonna raid into our friend Charm. So Charm kind of has his own like a lot of like homebrew rules for D&D. And he's the only one that I know that is live right now, so we're gonna go say hi. And then on Tuesday, tomorrow, will be the AMA with Steve, who runs Trollord Games. On Wednesday morning, it'll be Chuck and maybe Jeremy, and they do like world building talks. Thursday is the Troll Roundup with all of us, and we all like pick a topic and talk about it. Friday we got nothing, and then weekends are our actual plays. And in the meantime, we are only 7 days away, 1 week from the launch of Castles and Crusades Reforged. We're very excited about it. So definitely check that out. We are giving away a full PDF of the new player's handbook to everyone who signs up for like our newsletter. Let me just copy this link here. So definitely sign up here, and you get a free player's handbook. You don't have to back the Kickstarter to redeem the free player's handbook. Everyone that's watching on other platforms, I dropped it on Twitch. Let me just put it everywhere really quick. But yeah, basically, if you just sign up for the newsletter, that's where we like do updates about the project. You'll get a free player's handbook. You'll get it 2 days before the launch of the Kickstarter, so you'll receive it on the 8th. And you can decide if you want to back it for the full thing and get all 3 books. I think you'll like them. So definitely check it out. And now we will go for a raid for our buddy. We're going to raid into Charm. He was one of my players once. Now he's been like running games for years on Twitch. So go if you have a moment to like say something nice to him about the stream. It means the world to people when raids come in and folks hang out for a minute and like say something kind. So if you have a minute to do that, it would mean the world if you just like compliment him on his stream. And we're gonna go and we're gonna spread love. Happy Pride. Thank you all for being here. This was so lovely, and I will see you on Monday next week.